The crystal champagne flute shattered against the marble floor of the Westbrook Hills Country Club, sending golden bubbles and glass shards skittering across Evelyn Morrison's plain canvas sneakers. The pristine white tablecloth dripped with Dom Perignon as Victoria Pemberton's perfectly manicured hand withdrew, her coral lips curling into a vicious smile. "Perhaps this will teach you what happens when trash wanders into places it doesn't belong," she hissed, while the elite members of Connecticut's most exclusive club erupted in cruel laughter, unaware that the quiet woman they just humiliated was married to the man who would soon own everything they held dear. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the manicured lawns of Westbrook Hills Country Club as Evelyn Morrison pulled her sensible Honda Civic into the parking lot. She'd been running late, having spent the morning tutoring underprivileged children at the community center downtown. Her simple cotton sundress, a soft blue that matched her eyes, was slightly wrinkled from sitting on the floor with the kids. She grabbed her worn leather purse and hurried toward the entrance, where her sister-in-law Catherine had insisted they meet for lunch. Evelyn had resisted at first. She knew places like Westbrook Hills weren't meant for people like her. The club's membership fees alone could feed a small village for a year. But Catherine had been persistent, claiming she needed moral support for her first official lunch as a new member. Unable to refuse family, Evelyn had reluctantly agreed. The doorman's eyes swept over her with barely concealed disdain as she approached. His pristine uniform and polished brass name tag reading Charles gleamed in the sunlight. "May I help you?" he asked, his tone suggesting he very much doubted he could. "I'm meeting Catherine Morrison for lunch," Evelyn replied softly, tucking a strand of her chestnut hair behind her ear. The simple gold band on her finger caught the light, its modest appearance a stark contrast to the ostentatious jewelry adorning the women gliding past. Charles consulted his clipboard with exaggerated care. "Ah yes, Mrs. Morrison's guest. This way, please." He led her through the grand foyer, past oil paintings of stern-faced founders and trophy cases filled with silver cups. Evelyn's sneakers squeaked softly against the polished floors, drawing disapproving glances from members lounging in leather armchairs. The main dining room was a testament to old money and newer pretensions. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across tables draped in crisp white linen. The soft clink of silverware against fine china mingled with hushed conversations about stock portfolios and upcoming charity galas. Evelyn spotted Catherine immediately, her designer suit and nervous smile standing out among the sea of carefully cultivated superiority. "Evie, over here!" Catherine waved enthusiastically, oblivious to the raised eyebrows her exuberance caused. At the neighboring table, a group of women turned to assess the newcomer. Their leader, Victoria Pemberton, was the undisputed queen of Westbrook Hills society. Her platinum blonde hair was sculpted into an architectural marvel, her Chanel suit pressed to military precision. Flanking her were Margaret Hastings, a former model whose face had been lifted one too many times, and Diane Worthington, whose family fortune came from questionable pharmaceutical patents. "Ladies, it appears Catherine's standards for lunch companions have evolved," Victoria Stage whispered, loud enough for half the room to hear. Her companions tittered obligingly. Evelyn slid into her chair, offering Catherine a reassuring smile. "Sorry, I'm late. Traffic was terrible." "Don't worry about it," Catherine replied, though her eyes darted nervously to the neighboring table. "I'm just glad you came. This place is, well, it's a bit intimidating." Before Evelyn could respond, their waiter appeared. His name tag, a red Philippe, and his accent was as manufactured as his disdain. "Madame Morrison, your usual Perrier?" he asked Catherine, then turned to Evelyn with barely concealed contempt. And for Madame, just water, please. Tap is fine. The waiter's eyebrows climbed toward his receding hairline. Tap water? I'm afraid we only serve imported mineral water. Might I suggest the Evian? That's fine, Evelyn agreed, unwilling to make a scene. As Philippe retreated, she caught Victoria's penetrating stare. The older woman's eyes traveled from Evelyn's simple dress to her unadorned nails, cataloguing each perceived inadequacy. "Catherine, darling," Victoria called out, her voice dripping. "Honey over poison. I don't believe we've had the pleasure of meeting your friend." Catherine straightened, her social training kicking in. "Victoria, this is my sister-in-law, Evelyn Morrison. Evelyn Victoria Pemberton. She's on the board of directors." Victoria's smile could have frozen molten lava. "Morrison? I don't recall that name from any of our usual circles. What does your husband do, dear?" Evelyn's fingers tightened slightly around her water glass. "He's in business," she replied simply. "Business?" Margaret interjected, leaning forward with predatory interest. "How delightfully vague. What kind of business? Finance? Real estate? Surely not. Retail?" She pronounced the last word as if it tasted foul. "Various ventures," Evelyn deflected, studying her menu. The prices made her inwardly wince, though her expression remained placid. A simple salad cost more than she typically spent on a week's groceries. Diana Stage whispered to her companions, "I bet it's one of those tech startups. You know, the kind that flame out after burning through investor money." The women's laughter rang out like breaking glass. Catherine shifted uncomfortably, shooting Evelyn an apologetic glance. Their food arrived, providing a temporary reprieve from the interrogation. Evelyn had ordered the soup of the day, the least expensive item on the menu. Victoria and her coterie had opted for elaborate seafood towers and imported delicacies. As they ate, the conversation at the neighboring table grew increasingly pointed. Victoria regaled her friends with stories of recent charity events, each anecdote carefully crafted to highlight the vast differences between their world and Evelyn's. "Did you hear about the Rothschild Gala last week?" Victoria asked, though her voice carried directly to Evelyn's table. The theme was diamonds and champagne. Poor Muffy Vanderbilt showed up in last season's Valentino. Can you imagine the embarrassment? Margaret gasped dramatically. How gauche, though I suppose some people simply don't understand the importance of staying current. Speaking of which, her eyes slid meaningfully toward Evelyn's sundress. Evelyn continued eating her soup with quiet dignity, though Catherine was growing visibly distressed. The younger woman had worked so hard to gain acceptance here, and now she feared her association with Evelyn would undo months of careful social climbing. "You know," Diane mused loudly, "I've always believed that breeding shows. It's not just about money, though that certainly helps. It's about understanding one's place in society." Victoria nodded sagely. "Exactly, which is why membership standards are so crucial. We can't have just anyone walking in off the street." She paused, letting her gaze rest pointedly on Evelyn. "No offense, dear?" The insult hung in the air like a noxious cloud. Catherine opened her mouth to defend her sister-in-law, but Evelyn placed a gentle hand on her arm. "None taken," she replied evenly, though something flickered in her deep blue eyes, a spark of something the women couldn't quite identify. Philippe returned to clear their plates, his movements unnecessarily theatrical. As he reached for Evelyn's bowl, he accidentally knocked over her water glass. The liquid spread across the tablecloth, dripping onto her lap. "Oh, how clumsy of me!" he exclaimed without a trace of sincerity. "Perhaps Madame should be more careful where she places her beverages." Victoria seized the moment. "This is precisely what I mean about standards. When we allow anyone. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. And to dine here, accidents are bound to happen. She rose from her chair, champagne flute in hand, and approached their table with the calculated grace of a shark circling wounded prey. "You know, dear," she addressed Evelyn directly, "there's a charming little diner on the outskirts of town. I believe they serve excellent meatloaf, much more suited to someone of your circumstances." The room had grown quiet, other diners sensing blood in the water. Catherine's face flushed crimson with embarrassment and anger, but she remained frozen, caught between loyalty to family and fear of social ostracism. Evelyn dabbed at her wet dress with her napkin, her movements unhurried. When she looked up at Victoria, her expression was serene, almost amused. "Thank you for the recommendation. I'll keep it in mind." Victoria's eyes narrowed at the lack of visible distress. She'd expected tears, protests, or at least a hasty retreat. This calm acceptance threw her off balance. Determined to provoke a reaction, she continued her assault. "Tell me, Evelyn, such a quaint name, where did you attend university?" "Assuming you did, of course." "State College," Evelyn replied truthfully. "On scholarship." The revelation sent ripples of disdainful laughter through Victoria's group. "How industrious," Margaret drawled. "I suppose not everyone can afford the Ivy League experience." "Or any experience worth mentioning," Diane added, "though I'm sure community college has its charms." Victoria swirled her champagne, studying Evelyn like a specimen under glass. "And what is it you do now, besides accompanying relatives to establishments clearly beyond your station?" "I volunteer," Evelyn answered, "mostly with children's literacy programs and homeless shelters." The contempt in Victoria's laugh was palpable. "How noble and utterly unprofitable. No wonder you can barely afford proper attire." She gestured dismissively at Evelyn's simple dress. "Though I suppose charity work is admirable for those who lack the ambition or capability for real careers." Catherine finally found her voice. "Victoria, please. Evelyn is my family." "Family?" Victoria's perfectly shaped eyebrow arched. "My dear Catherine, you really must be more selective about whom you claim as relations. Association with the wrong sort can be so damaging to one's prospects." She turned back to Evelyn, her voice dripping with false concern. "You do understand how things work here, don't you? Westbrook Hills has maintained its exclusivity for generations. We have standards, traditions. People like you, well-meaning as you might be, simply don't belong." Evelyn set down her napkin and met Victoria's gaze directly. For a moment, something passed between them, a flash of steel beneath Evelyn's gentle exterior that made Victoria's confident smile falter slightly. "I understand perfectly," Evelyn said quietly. "More than you might imagine." Victoria recovered quickly, interpreting the response as submission. "Good. Then you'll understand why I must insist that Catherine be more discerning about her guest list in future. This is, after all, a private club. We have a reputation to maintain." She lifted her champagne flute higher, her voice carrying to every corner of the now silent dining room. "To standards," she declared, "and to knowing one's proper place in society." As her friends echoed the toast, Victoria's hand tilted ever so slightly. The champagne cascaded down, drenching Evelyn's dress and splashing across her shoes. The crystal flute followed, shattering on the marble floor in a spectacular display of calculated cruelty. "Oh dear," Victoria gasped with theatrical dismay. "How terribly clumsy of me. Though perhaps it's for the best. That dress was rather tired-looking anyway." The room erupted in nervous laughter, the sound sharp and brittle. Catherine half rose from her chair, torn between outrage and social paralysis. Margaret and Diane exchanged triumphant glances, reveling in their leader's successful humiliation of the interloper. Evelyn sat perfectly still as champagne dripped from her hair and clothes. The cold liquid had soaked through to her skin, but she didn't flinch. Instead, she reached for her purse with deliberate calm, extracting her phone. "Calling for a ride?" Victoria taunted. "Probably wise. I doubt that ancient Honda in the parking lot has heated seats. You'll catch your death in those wet clothes." Evelyn glanced up, a mysterious smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Something like that," she murmured, pressing a single button on her speed dial. "Make sure they know to use the service entrance," Margaret called out. "We wouldn't want to disturb the members with any unpleasantness." The phone rang once before a deep voice answered. Evelyn's smile widened slightly. "Darling, yes, I'm at Westbrook Hills. No, everything's fine, but I think it's time. Yes, all of it. See you soon." She ended the call and carefully placed the phone back in her purse. Around her, the mockery continued unabated. Philippe had returned with a mop, making an exaggerated show of cleaning up the accident while muttering in faux French about certain people and their inability to appreciate fine establishments. "Nah, I do hope you'll take this as a learning experience," Victoria continued, bolstered by her audience's approval. "There's no shame in accepting one's limitations. Perhaps you could find a nice book club at the public library. I hear they're very welcoming to all sorts." Diane leaned in conspiratorially. "I know an excellent thrift shop downtown. They sometimes have designer labels, if you know what to look for. Of course, they're usually several seasons old, but for someone on a budget." "How thoughtful," Evelyn replied, wringing champagne from her hem. "I'll be sure to remember that." Catherine finally found her courage. "This is unconscionable. Evelyn, I'm so sorry. We should go." "No need to leave on my account," Evelyn assured her. "In fact, I think things are about to get interesting." Victoria scoffed. "Interesting? My dear, the only interesting thing about this situation is how you've managed to maintain such dignity while being so thoroughly put in your place. Though I suppose when one has nothing to lose. Or everything to gain," Evelyn countered. Softly, before Victoria could decipher the cryptic response, the dining room's massive oak doors swung open. A hush fell over the room as a tall figure strode in, his presence commanding immediate attention. He wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than most cars in the parking lot. His dark hair was touched with distinguished silver at the temples, and his steel-grey eyes swept the room with laser focus before landing on Evelyn. "Mrs. Morrison?" Philippe stammered, his false accent slipping. "We weren't expecting—" "Change of plans?" the man said curtly, moving past the flustered waiter. His Italian leather shoes clicked against the marble as he approached Evelyn's table, his expression darkening as he took in her soaked appearance. Victoria, sensing a shift in the room's dynamics but not yet understanding its significance, stepped forward with her most practiced smile. "I don't believe we've met. I'm Victoria, Pemberton, head of the membership committee, and you are?" The man ignored her completely, kneeling beside Evelyn's chair. His voice softened as he touched her wet shoulder. "Evie, are you all right?" "I'm fine, James," she replied, her eyes twinkling with something that looked suspiciously like amusement. "Just a minor champagne incident." "Incident?" His jaw tightened as he surveyed the broken glass, the soaked tablecloth, and his wife's drenched clothing. "This looks deliberate." Victoria's confidence wavered slightly. "I'm sorry, but this is a private dining room. If you're not a member—" James Blackwood rose slowly, turning to face her. When he spoke, his voice was dangerously quiet. "Oh, but I am involved with this club. Very involved." "Blackwood," Margaret whispered, the color draining from her face. "As in Blackwood International." "The one and only," James confirmed, his smile sharp as a blade. "The company, that as of He checked his Patek Philippe watch. Approximately 15 minutes ago, owns the majority stake in Westbrook Hills Country Club. The silence that followed was absolute. Victoria's champagne flute slipped from nerveless fingers, joining its shattered companion on the floor. Diane swayed slightly, gripping her chair for support. Throughout the dining room, the whispered realization spread like wildfire. James Blackwood, the billionaire whose corporate empire spanned continents, whose name graced business journals and Forbes lists, was standing before them. And the woman they'd just humiliated, the woman in the simple sundress and canvas sneakers, was his wife. "That's impossible," Victoria managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "The board would never sell." "The board," James interrupted, "was quite eager to accept my offer, particularly after I pointed out several irregularities in the club's financial management, irregularities that I believe trace back to the membership committee's discretionary fund. Your discretionary fund, Mrs. Pemberton." Victoria's perfectly composed facade cracked. "I don't know what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. Facts that will be thoroughly investigated by my forensic accounting team, which arrives tomorrow morning." He turned back to Evelyn, his expression softening. "Did they hurt you?" "Just my dress," she assured him, "and perhaps their own futures." James helped her to her feet, shrugging off his suit jacket and draping it around her shoulders. The gesture was tender, intimate, a stark contrast to the Arctic chill in his eyes when he faced the room again. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice carrying to every corner, "please allow me to introduce my wife, Evelyn Blackwood, the woman you've spent the last hour mocking, insulting, and drenching in overpriced champagne." Catherine's mouth fell open. "Blackwood? But Evie, you said your name was Morrison." "My maiden name," Evelyn explained gently. "I prefer to use it when I'm volunteering. It helps me connect with people as myself, not as James's wife." "You knew," Victoria accused, her voice shrill with desperation. "You sat there and let you reveal your true characters?" Evelyn finished. "Yes, I did. James and I have been considering acquiring a country club for our foundation's charity work. We wanted to find the right fit, a place that could be transformed into something truly special. Your behavior today helped make our decision remarkably easy." James pulled out his phone, typing quickly. "Effective immediately, the following changes will be implemented at Westbrook Hills. First, the membership committee is dissolved. Victoria Pemberton, Margaret Hastings, and Diane Worthington are permanently banned from the premises." "You can't do this," Diane protested. "Our families have been members for generations." "We're members," James corrected. "Security is already waiting in the lobby to escort you out. Second, Philippe, if that's even your real name, your employment is terminated. We have no room for staff who participate in bullying guests." The waiter's false accent vanished completely. "But sir, I was just following the lead of these charming ladies. Consider this a lesson in choosing better role models." James continued scrolling through his phone. "Third, membership fees will be restructured. 50% of all dues will now fund local charities, specifically those focused on children's literacy and homeless support. Causes my wife champions." Evelyn touched his arm gently. "The scholarship program too, remember?" "Of course." "Fourth, we'll be establishing the Evelyn Blackwood Scholarship Fund. Each year, 10 promising students from underprivileged backgrounds will receive full club membership and mentorship from our business network." The remaining diners watched, in stunned silence as their world order crumbled. Those who had laughed the loudest at Evelyn's humiliation now studied their plates with intense interest, praying they wouldn't be singled out next. Victoria made one last desperate attempt to salvage her position. "This is ridiculous. You can't just walk in here and destroy everything we've built. This club has standards, traditions." "Traditions of cruelty, standards of snobbery." Evelyn spoke up, her voice calm but firm. Those aren't traditions worth preserving. This club has beautiful facilities, prime location, and enormous potential. What it lacks is heart. That's what we're going to change. Starting with the dress code, James added. Effective immediately, all members and guests are welcome to dress comfortably. Character matters more than designer labels. Margaret found her voice, though it trembled. But what about property values? Our reputation? People join Westbrook Hills for exclusivity. People join Westbrook Hills because they're insecure about their place in society, Evelyn countered. They need to feel superior to someone, anyone, to validate their own worth. We're going to create a different kind of exclusivity, one based on kindness, generosity, and genuine accomplishment. James's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and smiled. Perfect timing. The paperwork is complete. As of this moment, Westbrook Hills Country Club is officially under new management. Security, please escort Mrs. Pemberton, Mrs. Hastings, and Mrs. Worthington from the premises. Those 3 uniformed guards appeared as if summoned by magic. Victoria's carefully constructed composure finally shattered completely. This is a mistake. You'll regret this. The entire social register will boycott this place. Then we'll build a new social register, Evelyn replied serenely. One that values substance over status. As the 3 women were led away, their protests echoing through the hallways, the dining room remained frozen in shock. James addressed the remaining members, his tone brooking no argument. Anyone who feels they can't adapt to our new vision is welcome to resign their membership. Full refunds will be provided. For those who stay, I expect you to treat every person who walks through these doors with respect and dignity. The days of judging worth by bank accounts and bloodlines are over. Catherine finally found her voice. Evie, I had no idea. Why didn't you tell me? Evelyn squeezed her sister-in-law's hand. Because I wanted you to know me as myself, not as James's wife, and I needed to see what this place was really like. Sometimes the only way to understand a system is to experience it from the bottom. Besides, James added with a wry smile, Evelyn has always believed in letting people reveal themselves naturally. It's one of the things I love most about her. Philippe, still hovering uncertainty nearby, cleared his throat. Mr. Blackwood, about my position is terminated, as I said, however. James paused thoughtfully. If you're willing to drop the fake accent and undergo sensitivity training, we might find a place for you in our community outreach program. Consider it a chance to learn what real service means. The former waiter's shoulders sagged with relief. Thank you, sir. I'm actually from Brooklyn. The accent was Mrs. Pemberton's idea. I'm shocked, Evelyn deadpanned, earning a chuckle from her husband. As the initial chaos settled, members began approaching their table cautiously. Some offered awkward apologies, others genuine congratulations on the acquisition. Evelyn accepted both with equal grace, though James's protective presence ensured no one lingered too long. We should go, he murmured to her. You need dry clothes, and I need to brief our transition team. Evelyn nodded, then addressed the room one final time. To those who stay, I look forward to building something wonderful together. Change can be frightening, but it's also an opportunity. We're going to make Westbrook Hills a place where everyone, regardless of background, can find community and purpose. And as they walked toward the exit, Catherine hurried after them. Evie, wait! I'm so sorry about today. If I'd known they would treat you like that. Then you wouldn't have invited me, Evelyn asked gently. And I wouldn't have discovered what this place needed. Don't apologize, Catherine. You helped us make a decision that will benefit countless people. But what about you? After everything they said, everything they did? Evelyn smiled, pulling James's jacket tighter around her shoulders. Words only have the power we give them. And actions, as they learned today, have consequences. Outside, a fleet of luxury. Cars had assembled. The Blackwood security team, lawyers, and transition specialists James had kept on standby. Evelyn's humble Honda Civic looked almost comical, parked among the Bentleys and Mercedes. "Shall we take the rolls?" James suggested, gesturing to a pristine Phantom idling nearby. "Actually," Evelyn replied with a mischievous grin, "I think I'll drive myself home, in my ancient Honda with no heated seats." James laughed, pulling her close for a kiss that left no doubt about their relationship. "This is why I married you. Never change, Evie." "Change the world, not yourself," she replied, their private motto. "Same time tomorrow to review the renovation plans?" "Wouldn't miss it." He watched her walk to her car, shaking his head in admiration. "Oh, and Evie, next time someone tries to humiliate you, maybe give me more than 15 minutes notice. I nearly gave Goldman Sachs a heart attack pulling out of that merger meeting." "Where's the fun in that?" she called back, sliding into her Honda. "Besides, timing is everything in drama and business." As she drove away, members gathered at the windows, watching the woman they dismissed as nobody disappear down the tree-lined drive. The woman who had endured their scorn with quiet dignity. The woman who had just turned their exclusive world upside down. Inside, James addressed his team with crisp efficiency. "Full audit of the books by morning. I want every dirty secret, every embezzled penny, every discriminatory practice documented. We're not just changing policies, we're changing culture." "What about the media?" his PR director asked. "This story will break nationally. I'd headline, Billionaire's wife faces discrimination at elite club, couple responds by buying it and opening doors to all." It's exactly the kind of press we want for the foundation. As his team dispersed to their tasks, James paused in the grand foyer, studying the portraits of stern-faced founders. By tomorrow, those paintings would be replaced with images reflecting the club's new mission. The trophy cases would showcase community service awards instead of golf tournaments. The membership directory would include teachers, nurses, small business owners, people who contributed to society in meaningful ways. His phone buzzed with a text from Evelyn. "Stopped for ice cream. Want some?" He smiled, typing back, "Rocky Road, with extra marshmallows. Love you. Love you more. See you at home. Home." A modest colonial in a middle-class neighborhood, despite his billions. Because Evelyn insisted that happiness wasn't about square footage or zip codes. She was right, as usual. Just as she'd been right about Westbrook Hills. Sometimes you had to experience injustice firsthand to understand how to fix it. The next morning's headlines screamed the story across financial and society pages alike. Blackwood billions buy, bigotry bastion. Champagne cruelty costs club, elite their membership. From humiliation to transformation, the Evelyn Blackwood story. Victoria Pemberton's fall from grace was swift and complete. The forensic audit revealed she'd embezzled nearly $2 million from club funds over 5 years. Margaret Hastings' husband quietly filed for divorce after his own indiscretions came to light during the investigation. Diane Worthington attempted to join rival clubs, only to find doors firmly closed. James's influence in business circles ran deep, but the real story unfolded over the following months. Westbrook Hills Country Club became a model for inclusive excellence. The scholarship program's first recipient, a brilliant young entrepreneur from the inner city, launched a non-profit that provided professional attire to job seekers. The community garden, planted where the formal rose maze once stood, supplied fresh produce to local food banks. Evelyn personally oversaw the transformation, arriving each day in her Honda, wearing her comfortable clothes, greeting everyone from groundskeepers to former members with equal warmth. She converted Victoria's lavish office into a children's library, filling it with books about kindness, courage, and embracing differences. Philippe, now going by his real name, Pete, became the club's most popular community liaison, his Brooklyn charm winning over skeptics. He often told the story of the day he learned the difference between serving and service, crediting Evelyn's grace under pressure as his wake-up call. 6 months after the acquisition, Westbrook Hills hosted its first inclusive gala. The theme, character over carrots. Guests arrived in everything from designer gowns to department store dresses, from tuxedos to khakis. The only requirement was a generous heart. As Evelyn stood on the terrace overlooking the transformed grounds, James joined her, wrapping an arm around her waist. "No regrets about revealing yourself?" She leaned into him, watching children play on equipment that had replaced the exclusive tennis courts. "None. Though I do miss one thing." "What's that?" The look on Victoria's face when she realized who you were. She grinned. "Priceless doesn't begin to cover it." "Almost as good as her mugshot," James agreed. "Speaking of which, the district attorney called. She's agreed to a plea deal, full restitution plus community service." "Perfect. I know just the literacy program that could use her help." "You're really going to make her work with you?" "Everyone deserves a second chance, James. Besides, humility is a powerful teacher." He kissed her temple. "Have I mentioned lately how extraordinary you are? Only every day since college. Not nearly enough then." As the sun set over Westbrook Hills, casting golden light across the diverse crowd of members, tech entrepreneurs, mingling with teachers, doctors, chatting with artists, children of all backgrounds playing together, Evelyn reflected on the journey from humiliation to transformation. She still wore simple clothes, still drove her Honda, still volunteered at the same shelters and schools. The only difference was that now, when she walked into Westbrook Hills, she was greeted with genuine smiles and respectful nods. Not because she was Mrs. James Blackwood, Billionaire's wife, but because she was Evelyn, the woman who had taught. An entire community that true class couldn't be bought, inherited, or faked. It could only be earned through kindness, maintained through integrity, and shared with generosity. The champagne incident, as it came to be known, had washed away more than just pretense. It had cleansed an entire institution, preparing it for a future where worth was measured in character, not carrots. And in the end, that was the most exclusive club of all. James Blackwood's presence filled the grand dining room like a force of nature, his tailored suit and commanding bearing drawing every eye as he helped his champagne-soaked wife to her feet. The transformation in the atmosphere was palpable. The very air seemed to crackle with tension as the most powerful man in Connecticut's business world stood among them, his steel-gray eyes scanning the room with cold precision. "Security," he spoke into his phone, his voice carrying clearly across the hushed space. "Main dining room, now." Victoria Pemberton's perfectly composed facade crumbled as the reality of the situation struck her. This wasn't just any businessman. This was James Blackwood, the enigmatic billionaire whose corporate acquisitions were legendary, whose influence reached into every major boardroom from Hartford to Manhattan. And she had just orchestrated the public humiliation of his wife. "Mr. Blackwood," she stammered, attempting to salvage the situation with her most polished society smile. "There's clearly been some sort of misunderstanding." "The only misunderstanding," James interrupted, his tone sharp enough to cut glass, "is your assumption that cruelty is an acceptable membership requirement." He turned to Evelyn, his expression softening as he examined her soaked dress. "Are you hurt?" "Just my pride," she replied with a gentle smile, "though I suspect that's about to be thoroughly avenged." Margaret Hastings attempted to slink away toward the terrace, but James's voice stopped her mid-step. "Mrs. Hastings, leaving so soon, I believe you have an audience to witness your departure." He gestured to the security team, now filing into the room, 6 imposing figures in dark suits who took positions at each exit. "This is outrageous!" Diane Worthington protested, clutching her pearls. "We're founding members. Our families built this club." "Your families built a monument to exclusion," James countered. "I'm simply completing its renovation." His phone buzzed with an incoming message. He glanced at the screen and smiled. A predator's grin that made several onlookers shift uncomfortably. "Excellent. The board has unanimously approved the acquisition. As of 3 minutes ago, Blackwood International owns controlling interest in Westbrook Hills Country Club." The revelation rippled through the room like a shockwave. Whispers erupted from every corner as members processed this stunning development. Several board members who had been dining quietly at corner tables looked distinctly uncomfortable. Clearly, they had known about the acquisition, but hadn't anticipated it would be announced under such dramatic circumstances. "Impossible!" Victoria's voice rose to a shrill pitch. "Robert Stanton would never agree to this. He's been club president for 20 years. "Was president," James corrected. "Mr. Stanton resigned this morning, effective immediately. Something about irregularities in the membership committee's financial records. Irregularities that trace directly back to you, Mrs. Pemberton." Victoria's face drained of color. Her hands, adorned with diamonds that suddenly seemed gaudy rather than elegant, trembled visibly. "I don't know what you're talking about." "No? Perhaps this will refresh your memory." James pulled out his phone and projected a document onto the dining room's presentation screen, a feature typically used for wedding slideshows and charity auction displays. The image showed a series of bank transfers, each one linking club funds to a private account. $2 million skimmed over 5 years through inflated vendor invoices and phantom membership drives, your signature on every transaction. Gasps echoed through the room. Members who had always suspected something amiss in the club's finances, but never dared voice their concerns, now exchanged knowing looks. Others, who had considered Victoria untouchable, began edging away from her table, as if her disgrace might be contagious. That's preposterous," Victoria sputtered. "Those documents must be forged." "They're not," spoke a quiet voice from the back of the room. Peter Carrington, the club's longtime accountant, stepped forward. His typically hunched shoulders were straight, his usual nervous demeanor replaced by determined resolve. "I've been documenting these transactions for 3 years, Mr. Blackwood. I tried to report them to the board, but Mrs. Pemberton threatened to have me fired and blacklisted from every firm in Connecticut." Margaret and Diane looked at their leader with dawning horror. "Victoria, tell us he's lying," Margaret pleaded. "Of course he's lying," Victoria snapped, but her voice lacked conviction. Sweat beaded on her carefully powdered forehead. "This is all a setup. They're trying to..." "To what?" Evelyn interjected softly. "To reveal the truth. You've spent years building your power on intimidation and exclusion. You've made this club a fortress of cruelty where worth is measured in designer labels and family trees. But fortresses built on rotten foundations always fall." James's phone rang. He answered it, listened briefly, then ended the call with a satisfied nod. "The forensic accounting team has arrived. They'll be conducting a full audit starting tomorrow morning." He addressed the room at large. "Any member who wishes to report financial irregularities or instances of discriminatory practices may do so confidentially. Whistleblowers will be protected." The implications were clear. This wasn't just about Victoria's embezzlement. This was a complete transformation of the club's culture, starting from the top down. Victoria attempted one last desperate gambit. "You can't do this. Our lawyers will..." "Your lawyers," James interrupted. are currently in my conference room explaining why they failed to notice massive fraud occurring under their watch. I believe the term malpractice has been mentioned several times. Security moved closer to Victoria's table. The head of the team, a former Marine named Rodriguez, spoke quietly but firmly. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us." "Don't you dare touch me!" Victoria shrieked, backing away. "Do you know who I am? My husband plays golf with the governor." "Your husband," James said coolly, "is currently meeting with divorce attorneys. Apparently, he's as tired of your behavior as the rest of us." He held up his phone, showing a text message from Harold Worthington III. "Proceed with the ban. I'm filing papers Monday." The final crack in Victoria's facade shattered completely. Her carefully maintained composure dissolved into ugly rage. "You!" She spun toward Evelyn, her face contorted with fury. "This is all your fault. Coming here with your pathetic clothes and your holier-than-thou attitude. You planned this." Evelyn shook her head gently. "I didn't plan anything, Victoria. I simply existed. Your hatred did the rest." "Mrs. Pemberton," Rodriguez stepped forward, "you need to leave now. You can walk out with dignity or we can escort you. Your choice." For a moment, it seemed Victoria might physically attack someone. Her manicured nails curved like claws, her designer heels planted in a fighter's stance. Then, perhaps realizing the futility of resistance, she grabbed her Hermes handbag with shaking hands. "This isn't over." "You're right," James agreed. "The criminal investigation is just beginning." As security escorted Victoria out, her two lieutenants faced their own reckoning. Margaret Hastings, whose husband owned a chain of luxury car dealerships, watched her social capital evaporate in real time as other members pointedly turned their backs. Diane Worthington discovered that her family's pharmaceutical fortune meant nothing when weighed against the Blackwood Empire's influence. "I believe you both have some packing to do," James said pleasantly. "Your membership privileges are permanently revoked. Oh, and Mrs. Hastings, that charitable foundation you chair, they'll be receiving documentation of your rather creative expense reports. Something about charging personal shopping sprees as administrative costs." Margaret's surgically enhanced face couldn't hide her panic. "You wouldn't dare." "I already have." James's smile was arctic. "Amazing what a forensic audit can uncover when properly motivated." As security began herding the three women toward the exit, Diane made one final attempt at salvage. "Please, Mr. Blackwood, we have children in private schools, social obligations. Then I suggest you teach your children better values than you've demonstrated." Evelyn spoke up, her voice kind but firm. "Show them that actions have consequences, that cruelty leaves lasting scars, and that true grace comes from lifting others up, not tearing them down." The room remained silent as the three women were escorted out, their designer heels clicking, a staccato retreat across the marble floors. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, members watched as they were led to waiting security vehicles, not police cars, though those might come later, but discreet black SUVs that would deliver them, home to pack their belongings and face their futures. James turned to address the remaining members, his presence commanding absolute attention. "Let me be crystal clear about what happens next. Westbrook Hills Country Club is under new management. The old rules, the ones that valued pedigree over character, that celebrated exclusion over inclusion, are gone. Permanently." He began, pacing, his measured steps echoing in the hushed room. "Effective immediately, we're implementing the following changes. First, all membership applications currently labeled pending review will be re-evaluated based on merit, not connections. The wait list that mysteriously never seemed to move, it moves now." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Several members, who had spent years trying to get friends and relatives accepted, exchanged hopeful glances. "Second," James continued, 50% of all membership dues will fund charitable initiatives, education, healthcare, community development, causes that actually matter. This club has extracted wealth from this community for generations. Time to give back. An elderly member in the corner raised his hand tentatively. What about our traditions, our heritage? James's expression softened slightly. Good traditions, the charity golf tournaments, the holiday galas that raise money for local hospitals, those stay. But traditions that exist solely to make others feel small, those die today. He gestured to Evelyn, who stood beside him with quiet dignity despite her champagne-stained dress. My wife volunteers at homeless shelters, teaches financial literacy to single mothers, runs coding camps for underprivileged youth. She has more class in her little finger than Victoria Pemberton had in her entire designer wardrobe. Yet she was mocked for wearing comfortable shoes and bringing homemade lunches. The elderly gentleman nodded slowly. I see your point, Mr. Blackwood. Perhaps we've lost our way. Third, James announced, we're establishing the Evelyn Blackwood Scholarship Fund. 20 full memberships yearly for promising young professionals who could never afford our fees. Teachers, nurses, social workers, first responders, people who actually contribute to society rather than simply inheriting it. This drew audible gasps. Full membership at Westbrook Hills cost more than many people's annual salaries. The implications were staggering. Fourth, the dress code is abolished. Members are welcome to dress however they feel comfortable. Character isn't measured by label or price tag. Fifth, all staff will receive a 30% raise, full benefits and profit-sharing options. The people who actually keep this place running deserve to share in its success. The servers and maintenance staff, who had been hovering anxiously at the edges of the room, straightened with surprised pride. Several members began applauding, starting with Catherine Morrison, who had finally found her courage. And finally, James concluded, we're converting the East Wing into a community center. Free after-school programs, job training workshops, senior activities. This club will no longer be an island of privilege in a sea of need. The transformation was breathtaking in its scope. In the space of an hour, James Blackwood had dismantled a century-old bastion of elitism and begun rebuilding it as something entirely different. A force for positive change. An elderly woman in pearls raised her hand. Mr. Blackwood, I'm Eleanor Chatsworth. I've been a member here for 40 years. I want to apologize. For what, Mrs. Chatsworth? For staying silent. For watching people like Victoria hurt others and doing nothing because I was afraid of becoming a target myself. She looked at Evelyn with tears in her eyes. I'm sorry, my dear. We should have stood up for you. Her words opened a floodgate. Other members began speaking up, sharing stories of their own experiences with Victoria's reign of terror, expressing shame at their complicity through silence. I was blackballed from the garden committee for suggesting we donate our flower show proceeds to the food bank, one woman admitted. She threatened to expose my son's learning disability if I didn't vote her way on the board, another confessed. I once saw her reduce a new member to tears for wearing the same dress to a luncheon. I said nothing, a third added, voice heavy with regret. Evelyn listened to each confession with compassionate attention. When the last person had spoken, she addressed the room. Thank you all for your honesty. It takes courage to admit when we've failed to act. But the past is prologue. What matters is what we do next. James nodded approvingly. My wife is right. This is a chance for redemption, not just for the club, but for all of us. We can choose to be better. Catherine Morrison stepped forward, her voice steady now. I'd like to volunteer for the scholarship committee. My sister-in-law has taught me that real worth isn't about what you own, it's about what you give. I'll help with the community center, Eleanor Chatsworth offered. I was a teacher for 30 years before I retired. These old bones still have some wisdom to share. One by one, members began volunteering for various initiatives. The atmosphere in the room shifted from shame and shock to something approaching hope. The old guard was crumbling, but something better was rising in its place. Peter the accountant approached James hesitantly. "Mr. Blackwood, what about the staff who participated in the bullying? Some of us were just following orders, but others..." He glanced meaningfully at where Philippe had been standing, though the pretentious waiter had mysteriously disappeared during the confrontation. "Anyone who wants to stay can stay, if they're willing to embrace our new culture," James declared. "But I expect genuine change, not just lip service. My wife has an excellent radar for authenticity," Evelyn smiled. "People can surprise you when given the chance to be better versions of themselves." As the lunch service resumed, this time with markedly more respectful treatment of all guests, James and Evelyn found themselves surrounded by members eager to discuss the club's new direction. Ideas flowed freely. A mentorship program pairing established professionals with scholarship recipients, a community garden to supply local food banks, partnerships with area schools for STEM education. "You know," James murmured to Evelyn during a brief lull, "when you called me, I was prepared to simply buy this place and shut it down. Your idea was much better." "Destruction is easy," she replied. "Transformation takes work, but it's worth it. Besides, this building is too beautiful to waste. It should be filled with laughter and learning, not judgment and exclusion. Have I mentioned lately how brilliant you are? Not in the last hour." Their quiet moment was interrupted by the return of Security Chief Rodriguez. "Mr. Blackwood, we've completed the initial sweep. Found some interesting items in Mrs. Pemberton's office, including a ledger documenting which members she had dirt on. Apparently, she's been running quite the blackmail operation." "Secure everything," James ordered, "and contact our legal team. Anyone who was being extorted deserves to know they're free." The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of activity. Lawyers arrived to handle the paperwork. Accountants began their preliminary audit. Journalists, tipped off by members with media connections, gathered outside hoping for interviews. Through it all, Evelyn remained calm and gracious, a steady presence amid the chaos. As the sun began to set, casting golden light through the dining room windows, James and Evelyn finally prepared to leave. The valet brought around their car, not one of James's fleet of luxury vehicles, but Evelyn's modest Honda Civic, which she insisted on driving herself. Mrs. Blackwood, a young woman, approached hesitantly. She wore a server's uniform and had the worn look of someone working multiple jobs to make ends meet. "I'm Maria. I just wanted to say thank you for what you did today, for seeing us as people, not just uniforms." Evelyn took Maria's hands in hers. "Thank you for your hard work. This place runs because of people like you." She paused, studying the young woman's intelligent eyes. "Are you in school?" "Night classes at community college, business administration, but it's slow going with my work schedule." "Not anymore," James interjected. "Full scholarship to the university of your choice, starting next semester. Consider it the first grant from the Blackwood Foundation." Maria's eyes widened. I don't know what to say." "Say you'll make the most of it," Evelyn smiled, "and maybe come back one day to help others climb the ladder behind you." As they drove home, Evelyn gazed out the window at the familiar streets of their middle-class neighborhood. Despite his wealth, she had insisted they keep their modest house, the one they'd bought when James was still building his empire from a garage startup. "No regrets about revealing yourself?" James asked, navigating the evening traffic. "None," she replied firmly. I joined that club because Catherine was so nervous about fitting in. I wanted to support her. I never expected to become the catalyst for a social revolution. To find such ugliness in a place that prides itself on refinement, but also to discover how many people were hungry for change, just waiting for someone to show it was possible. You've always seen the best in people, Evelyn, even when they're at their worst. Everyone has light and shadow, James. Sometimes they just need permission to choose which one to feed. They pulled into their driveway, where their teenage daughter Emma was shooting hoops in the fading light. She paused as they got out of the car, taking in her mother's stained dress and her father's grim expression. "Rough day at the country club?" she asked with a teenager's instinctive sarcasm. "Transformative day," Evelyn corrected, ruffling her daughter's hair. "Come inside. We have quite a story to tell you about standing up to bullies and changing the world." That evening, as the family gathered around their kitchen table, the same scratched oak surface where James had sketched his first business plans, they talked about courage, justice, and the responsibility that comes with privilege. Emma listened with growing amazement as her parents recounted the day's events. "So, you just sat there while that woman poured champagne on you?" Emma asked incredulously. "Sometimes the most powerful response to cruelty is dignity," Evelyn explained. "Besides, I knew your father would handle the rest. But why didn't you tell them who you were from the beginning?" "Because I wanted to be judged for who I am, not what we have. And in doing so, I got to see who they really were." Emma considered. "This, I guess. But weren't you angry?" "Anger would have given them power over me. Instead, I chose to feel sorry for them. Imagine living your whole life believing your worth comes from making others feel worthless. What a small, sad existence." James's phone buzzed with incoming messages. Board members resigning, lawyers confirming the audit scope, reporters requesting interviews. The story was spreading fast. "The Times wants an exclusive," he reported. "Wall Street Journal too. Apparently, billionaire's wife faces country club discrimination, husband buys it and transforms it, makes for compelling headlines." "Let them wait until tomorrow," Evelyn decided. "Tonight is for family." But the outside world wouldn't wait. Their doorbell rang just as they were finishing dinner. Through the peephole, James saw a familiar face, Robert Stanton, the former club president. "I'll handle this," James said, but Evelyn stopped him. "We'll handle it together. That's how we do everything." They opened the door to find Stanton looking decidedly uncomfortable, holding an expensive bottle of wine like a peace offering. His usual commanding presence had deflated, leaving an aging man in an expensive suit who suddenly seemed unsure of himself. "James, Evelyn," he began formally, then stopped. I came to apologize and to explain." "Come in, Robert," Evelyn said graciously, stepping aside. They settled in the living room, another deliberate choice of Evelyn's to maintain middle class. Normalcy despite their wealth. Stanton perched uncomfortably on their well-worn sofa, clearly more at home in leather club chairs and mahogany-paneled rooms. "I knew about Victoria's embezzlement," he admitted without preamble. "I've known for 2 years, but she had information about my son's troubles with the law, DUI charges that were made to disappear. She threatened to resurrect them if I interfered with her management of the club." "Blackmail," James stated flatly. "Yes, I'm not proud of it. I chose protecting my family's reputation over doing the right thing. But watching what happened today, seeing how you handled everything with such grace, Evelyn, I realized I've been part of the problem." "We all face choices between what's easy and what's right," Evelyn responded. "The question is, what choice will you make now?" "I want to help with the transition, the community programs, whatever you need." I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but forgiveness isn't deserved, Evelyn interrupted gently. It's given, and it's easier to give when someone is genuinely trying to change. Stanton's shoulders sagged with relief. Thank you. Thank you. After he left, promising to return the next day with full documentation of the club's inner workings, James turned to his wife with admiration. You just forgave a man who let you be humiliated in public. I forgave a man who was trapped by his own fears, she corrected. Besides, we need allies who understand the old system if we're going to build something better. The next morning brought a media storm. Photos of Evelyn's champagne-soaked dress had somehow made their way online, accompanied by breathless accounts of the Blackwood takeover. Financial channels analyzed the acquisition's impact on James's portfolio. Society pages dissected the implications for Connecticut's elite. But the story that gained the most traction was a human interest piece titled "The Billionaire's Wife Who Chose Kindness Over Revenge." At Westbrook Hills, the transformation was already underway. Work crews removed the imposing portraits of stern-faced founders, replacing them with local artwork. The restrictive dress code signs came down. In the kitchen, staff prepared for their first community outreach event, a free cooking class for single parents. Victoria, Margaret, and Diane's abrupt departure had created a power vacuum, but instead of chaos, something unexpected emerged. Collaboration. Members who had been silenced or sidelined for years stepped forward with ideas and energy. The scholarship committee received over 50 volunteer applications in its first day. Peter Carrington, the accountant who had finally found his courage, worked alongside forensic auditors to unravel years of financial manipulation. Each discovery painted a darker picture of Victoria's reign: diverted funds, destroyed careers, lives deliberately sabotaged to maintain control. She kept files on everyone, Peter reported to James and Evelyn in the former president's office, which was being converted into the community center's administrative hub. Personal secrets, financial vulnerabilities, family scandals. She called it her insurance policy. Destroy it all, Evelyn ordered without hesitation. Whatever secrets people have aren't our business. Everyone deserves a fresh start. Even Victoria? James asked, raising an eyebrow. Especially Victoria. She'll face legal consequences for her crimes, but I won't perpetuate the cycle of humiliation and exposure. That ends here. As they spoke, a commotion arose in the hallway. Philippe, or rather Pete, as he preferred to be called when not performing his ridiculous French accent, appeared in the doorway, looking sheepish. Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood, I want to apologize for everything. The way I treated you, the act I put on, it was all wrong. You're right, Evelyn agreed. It was wrong. The question is, who do you want to be now? I want to help, really help. I'm actually from Brooklyn, worked my way through community college. Victoria hired me because I could play the part of sophisticated European waitstaff, but I'm tired of pretending. Then don't, James said simply. Be yourself. If you're willing to embrace our new culture, you can stay. But one hint of the old attitudes. You'll never see them again, Pete promised fervently. I've got younger siblings in public school. I want them to grow up in a better world than the one we had here. As the weeks passed, the transformation of Westbrook Hills accelerated. The scholarship program's first recipients were announced. A special education teacher, a pediatric nurse, a firefighter who ran youth programs in his off hours. Their introduction to the club was marked not by scrutiny of their backgrounds, but by celebration of their contributions to the community. The community center opened with a ribbon-cutting ceremony that drew local politicians and media attention. But the real story was in the faces of the children who flooded in for after-school programs, the seniors who found companionship in daily activities, the job seekers who attended resume workshops. Victoria Pemberton's legal troubles mounted. As the investigation expanded, her husband did indeed file for divorce, citing not just infidelity, but criminal behavior. Margaret Hastings attempted to join a club in Greenwich, only to find her reputation had preceded her. Diane Worthington moved to Florida, where she discovered that sunshine couldn't wash away the shadows of her past. But the ripple effects went far beyond the individuals involved. Other exclusive clubs began questioning their own policies. Corporate boards discussed the dangers of unchecked power and the importance of diverse perspectives. The phrase Blackwood transformation entered the lexicon of business schools as shorthand for radical cultural change. On the first anniversary of the Champagne incident, Westbrook Hills hosted a gala unlike any in its history, the ballroom filled with an unprecedented mix of people: tech entrepreneurs chatting with teachers, doctors dancing with daycare providers, children playing. Where they'd once been banned, Evelyn stood at the podium, wearing a simple blue dress not unlike the one she'd worn that fateful day. Beside her, James beamed with pride as she addressed the crowd. "A year ago, someone tried to put me in my place by pouring champagne over my head. They thought my place was beneath them because I chose simplicity over show, service over status. They were wrong." Applause rippled through the room. "My place, our place, is wherever we choose to stand. And I choose to stand for the belief that every person has worth, that kindness is strength, that community trumps exclusivity every time." The ovation that followed shook the chandeliers. In the front row, Pete, now head of community relations, wiped away tears. Beside him, Maria, the former server now pursuing her business degree full-time, clutched her scholarship award. Throughout the room, lives changed by the Blackwood transformation bore witness to the power of choosing compassion over cruelty. "Some people measure success in dollars or social standing," Evelyn continued. "I measure it in the number of lives we've touched, the barriers we've broken, the hearts we've opened. By that measure, we're all billionaires now." Later that night, as they drove home in Evelyn's Honda, she still refused to give it up, James reached over to squeeze her hand. "You know, when I was building my business empire, I thought success meant having enough power that no one could ever hurt us. I was wrong. Oh, real power isn't about being untouchable. It's about touching others. You taught me that." "We taught each other," she corrected. "You had the resources to change the system. I just showed you why it needed changing. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Victoria hadn't pushed things so far that day?" Evelyn considered this. Maybe change would have come more slowly, or maybe not at all. Sometimes it takes a crisis to reveal what's been broken all along. In trying to humiliate me, she accidentally liberated everyone, including herself eventually. "You still believe she can change?" "I believe everyone can change given the right circumstances. Look at Pete or Robert Stanton, or all the members who went from silent bystanders to active reformers. People are capable of extraordinary transformation when you give them a reason to be better." As they pulled into their driveway, past the basketball hoop where Emma still practiced daily, Evelyn reflected on the journey from humiliation to transformation. The champagne had long since been washed away, but the changes it catalyzed continued to ripple outward, touching lives throughout their community and beyond. The next morning brought news that Victoria had agreed to a plea deal: full restitution, plus 5 years of community service. Her first assignment? Teaching financial literacy at a women's shelter, a program Evelyn had specifically requested. "You're giving her a chance to make amends," James observed over breakfast. "I'm giving her a chance to discover who she might have been if she'd chosen service over status from the beginning," Evelyn replied. "It's never too late to become who you're meant to be." And so the story of the champagne incident became legend, but more importantly, it became a catalyst. Other clubs, corporations, and institutions began their own transformations. The Blackwood method was taught in business schools and discussed in boardrooms, but for Evelyn, the greatest success wasn't in the headlines or the accolades, it was in the small moments. A scholarship recipient graduating with honors, a former bully mentoring troubled youth, a community coming together across lines that had once divided them. It was in the knowledge that sometimes the greatest power comes not from fighting cruelty with cruelty, but from answering it with such profound grace that the entire system transforms. As Evelyn often said when asked about that day, they thought they were putting me in my place. Instead, they helped me find my purpose, and in finding my purpose, we all found a better way forward. The champagne had been meant to shame her. Instead, it had baptized a movement, and that movement, like all true transformations, continued. Long after the bubbles had gone flat and the headlines had faded, changing lives one act of kindness at a time. The morning after the Westbrook Hills transformation made national headlines, Victoria Pemberton sat in her attorney's office, her designer suit replaced by a conservative grey dress that couldn't quite hide her diminished circumstances. Across the mahogany desk, Harold Whitmore adjusted his glasses as he reviewed the forensic audit findings. $2 million, Victoria, over 5 years. The evidence is irrefutable. He slid a folder across the desk. The Blackwoods are offering you a choice: full restitution with community service or federal prosecution. Victoria's perfectly manicured fingers trembled as she opened the file. Bank statements, doctored invoices, diverted membership fees, her carefully constructed empire of deceit laid bare in black and white. Community service where? The Evelyn Blackwood Literacy Center. You'll be teaching basic reading skills to underprivileged adults, 3 days a week for 2 years. The irony wasn't lost on her. The woman she'd tried to humiliate would now oversee her penance. Victoria closed her eyes, remembering Evelyn's serene expression as champagne dripped from her hair. She'd mistaken kindness for weakness, simplicity for stupidity. Now she understood that true power didn't announce itself with designer labels and cutting remarks. "I'll take the deal," she whispered. Meanwhile, at Westbrook Hills, Evelyn stood in what had once been the most exclusive dining room in Connecticut, now transformed into a vibrant community space. The crystal chandeliers remained, but they now illuminated long tables where children from the scholarship program worked on homework alongside volunteer tutors. The walls that had witnessed her humiliation now displayed artwork created by local students. "Mrs. Blackwood?" A tentative voice interrupted her thoughts. She turned to find Peter, formerly Philippe, holding a clipboard. His Brooklyn accent was undisguised, his demeanor genuinely respectful. "The catering team wants to know if we should set up the buffet stations for tonight's fundraiser in the main ballroom or out on the terrace." "What do you think, Peter?" she asked, smiling at his startled expression. "Me? Well," he considered carefully. "The terrace has that beautiful sunset view, and the weather's perfect. Plus, it's less formal, more welcoming, matches what we're trying to build here. Excellent reasoning, let's go with the terrace." As he hurried off, Evelyn reflected on his transformation. The man who'd once sneered at her request for tap water now understood that service meant lifting others up, not putting them down. James appeared in the doorway, his sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. Despite his billions, he'd spent the morning helping install new playground equipment where the exclusive tennis courts had stood. "The contractor says the community garden expansion will be finished by next week. We'll have enough space to triple our food bank donations. Perfect timing. The Harvest Festival Planning Committee meets tomorrow." Evelyn straightened his collar absently, a gesture of familiar intimacy. "Catherine called. She's bringing her whole book club tonight. Apparently, they're all eager to support the literacy program." Your sister-in-law has certainly embraced the new vision. She always had a good heart. She just needed permission to show it. Evelyn gazed out the window where members of all backgrounds mingled on the lawn. A software developer chatted with a kindergarten teacher. A retired doctor played chess with a young entrepreneur. The artificial barriers had crumbled, replaced by genuine connections. The Times wants a follow-up interview, James mentioned. 1 year later, how the experiment in inclusive excellence is working. Tell them to come to the graduation ceremony next month. Let them see Marina's valedictorian speech. Marina Rodriguez, the scholarship program's first recipient, had blossomed from a shy teenager into a confident young woman. Her tech startup, developed with mentorship from club members, had just secured its first round of funding. That evening, as guests arrived for the fundraiser, Evelyn noticed a familiar figure hovering at the entrance. Margaret Hastings, former Queen Bee of the Mean Girl trio, clutched a modest purse and wore an expression of uncertain humility. Her divorce had been finalized a month ago. Her social standing evaporated along with her alimony prospects when her ex-husband's fraud conviction made headlines. Margaret, Evelyn approached with genuine warmth. I'm glad you came. I wasn't sure I'd be welcome. Margaret's voice lacked its former sharp edge. After everything, everyone's welcome here. That's rather the point. Evelyn guided her inside. The past is past. What matters is who you choose to be now. Tears welled in Margaret's carefully made-up eyes. I've been thinking a lot about that day. How cruel we were, how blind. You had every reason to destroy us, but instead, she gestured at the transformed space, you built something beautiful. We all have the capacity for change, Margaret. Sometimes we just need a wake-up call. As the fundraiser progressed, Evelyn moved through the crowd with quiet grace. She wore a simple navy dress, not because she couldn't afford designer clothes, but because she'd never needed external validation. Her worth came from within, from the lives she touched, the changes she inspired. Near the dessert table, she encountered Diane Worthington's daughter, Ashley, a college student who'd initially shared her mother's snobbish attitudes. Mrs. Blackwood, I wanted to thank you. After Mom got banned, I was furious. But then I started volunteering at the literacy center and it changed everything. I switched my major to education. I want to make a real difference, like you do. You already are, Ashley. Change starts with individual choices. As the evening wound down, James found Evelyn on the terrace, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and rose. Successful night. We raised enough to fund the scholarship program for 3 more years. It's not about the money, though that helps. It's about the connections. Look at them, James. She nodded toward the gathering. Former adversaries becoming allies, strangers becoming friends, barriers dissolving, all because you had the courage to sit through their mockery with dignity, all because we chose transformation over retaliation. She leaned against him. Though I admit, the look on Victoria's face when you walked in was rather satisfying. He chuckled. Speaking of Victoria, she starts at the literacy center Monday. Are you sure about this? Everyone deserves redemption. Besides, she was an excellent organizer. Those skills could benefit our programs once she learns to use them for good instead of evil. 6 months later, Victoria stood before a classroom of adult learners, many of whom worked minimum-wage jobs while trying to improve their education. The designer suits were gone, replaced by practical clothing suitable for sitting on the floor, with students helping them sound out words, celebrating their victories. Mrs. P, I got it. Jorge, a maintenance worker in his 50s, held up his workbook triumphantly. I read the whole page without help. Victoria's smile was genuine as she high-fived him. Excellent work, Jorge. Your dedication is inspiring. The words felt foreign on her tongue, sincere praise instead of cutting remarks, but natural too, real. During her break, she encountered Evelyn in the center's kitchen, preparing snacks for the students. "You were right," Victoria said, without preamble, about service, about worth, about everything. Evelyn handed her a tray of sandwiches. "You're discovering what was always inside you, Victoria. Compassion doesn't appear overnight. It grows when we nurture it. I wasted so many years building walls instead of bridges." Victoria's voice held genuine remorse, judging people by their bank accounts instead of their character. "The past shapes us, but doesn't define us. You're writing a new chapter now." Canzo. As Victoria returned to her classroom, Evelyn felt a deep satisfaction, not from revenge or vindication, but from witnessing genuine transformation. The woman who'd wielded champagne as a weapon now used knowledge as a gift. The first anniversary, celebration of the new Westbrook Hills, drew members from every walk of life. The grand ballroom, once reserved for black tie galas, now hosted a community potluck. Families brought dishes representing their heritage: Puerto Rican mofongo next to Irish stew, Indian curry beside Italian pasta. The symphony of flavors mirrored the harmony of the transformed community. Peter, now the director of community relations, had organized a talent show. Children performed alongside adults, amateur musicians shared the stage with professionals, all united by joy rather than judgment. When Marina took the microphone for her valedictorian address, the room fell silent. "A year ago, I was just a girl from the projects with big dreams and empty pockets," she began. "Then the Blackwood Scholarship changed my life. But it wasn't just the financial support. It was the mentorship, the networks, the belief that I belonged here as much as anyone. Mrs. Blackwood taught me that true exclusivity isn't about keeping people out. It's about lifting people up." Thunderous applause greeted her words. In the audience, several original members who'd initially threatened to resign sat with tears in their eyes. They'd discovered that opening their hearts had enriched their lives far more than closing their ranks ever had. Later, as Evelyn and James walked through the grounds, they paused at the memorial garden planted where the formal rose maze once stood. Each flowering tree honored a community member who'd made a difference. Teachers, firefighters, volunteers, ordinary people who'd lived extraordinary lives of service. "No regrets?" James asked, watching her face in the moonlight. "Only that we didn't do this sooner." She squeezed his hand. "Though perhaps it happened exactly when it needed to. That day with the champagne. And it was a catalyst. Sometimes we need to experience darkness to appreciate light." Victoria asked to speak at next month's board meeting. She has ideas for expanding the literacy program. Evelyn smiled. "From queen bee to worker bee. It suits her better." "You know what suits you?" James pulled her close. "Everything, but especially this, being exactly who you are, changing the world one heart at a time. We're changing it together, you, me, and everyone who believes that kindness is strength, that diversity is wealth, that true class can't be bought or inherited, only earned through how we treat others." As they headed home in Evelyn's trusty Honda, she'd refused to give it up despite James's offers of luxury vehicles. They passed the club's new welcome sign, Westbrook Hills, where character counts. Below it, in smaller letters, founded on exclusion, transformed by inclusion. The local news van parked nearby suggested tomorrow's headlines would feature their anniversary celebration. But Evelyn knew the real story wasn't in the dramatic transformation or the billionaire's intervention. It was in the quiet moments. Jorge reading his first book, Ashley choosing education over entitlement, Victoria finding purpose in service, Peter discovering authentic pride in his work. 2 years after the Champagne incident, Westbrook Hills had become a model for community centers nationwide. The Blackwood method, transforming exclusive spaces into inclusive places, inspired similar changes in country clubs, private schools, and corporate boards across America. Business schools taught case studies on their acquisition, but Evelyn preferred the handwritten thank you notes from scholarship recipients and literacy program graduates. On a crisp autumn morning, Evelyn arrived at the club for her weekly volunteer shift. The parking lot told the story of transformation. Luxury cars parked beside practical sedans, motorcycles next to minivans. Inside, the breakfast buffet served both caviar and scrambled eggs, acknowledging that elegance and accessibility weren't mutually exclusive. "Evelyn!" a familiar voice called out. She turned to see Victoria approaching, her once haughty stride replaced by purposeful energy. The Adult Education Committee approved our proposal. We're launching evening classes in financial literacy and job skills training. Wonderful news. And the instructor lineup? I'll be teaching organizational skills and project management. Victoria's eyes sparkled with genuine enthusiasm. Who better to explain systems than someone who once used them for the wrong purposes? As they discussed curriculum details, Margaret joined them, holding a stack of flyers. The youth mentorship program is full, but we have a waiting list. Should we expand to 2 sessions per week? Let's discuss it at the team meeting, Evelyn suggested. Peter might have scheduling ideas. The transformation was complete. The very women who had tried to humiliate her now worked alongside her, their talents redirected toward building up rather than tearing down. The hierarchy hadn't been destroyed, it had been reimagined. Status now came from service, influence from integrity, power from empowering others. That afternoon, as Evelyn prepared to leave, she found James in the library reviewing architectural plans with their daughter Emma, who'd inherited her mother's compassion and her father's business acumen. At 16, Emma was already developing affordable housing proposals for her senior project. "Mom, look!" Emma spread the blueprints across the table. "If we convert the old Caddyshack into micro-apartments, we could house 10 formerly homeless individuals while they complete job training. Brilliant, sweetheart. Present it to the board next week." James caught Evelyn's eye over their daughter's head, his expression soft with pride. They'd raised Emma in the same modest home, teaching her that wealth was a tool for good, not a weapon for superiority. She attended public school, volunteered at shelters, and understood that her privilege came with responsibility. "Ready for home?" James asked. "Almost. I want to check on the evening literacy class first." As she walked through the halls that had witnessed her humiliation, Evelyn felt only gratitude. The champagne that had drenched her that day had washed away illusions, revealing truth beneath pretense. In trying to put her in her place, her tormentors had instead found their own, as part of a community that valued contribution over consumption and character over currency. The literacy classroom buzzed with quiet concentration. Adults of all ages bent over workbooks, supporting each other through the challenge of learning. In the corner, Victoria patiently helped a grandmother sound out words to read to her grandchildren. The scene embodied everything Westbrook Hills had become, a place where dignity wasn't determined by degrees or dollars, but by the willingness to grow, to serve, to see worth in every person. As Evelyn headed to her car, she passed the spot where Victoria had doused her with champagne. A small plaque now marked the location. Here began a transformation. Sometimes we must be broken open to let light in. Beneath it, in smaller text, dedicated to all who choose kindness over cruelty, service over status, community over exclusivity. The parking lot security guard, hired through their Second Chance employment program, waved goodnight. "Have a blessed evening, Mrs. Blackwood." You too, Robert. See you tomorrow. She drove home through familiar streets, past the community garden that now supplied 3 food banks, the youth centre built with club donations, the small business incubator funded by reformed members seeking to give back. Each landmark told a story of redemption, of potential realized, of walls becoming bridges. At dinner that night, Emma chatted about her housing project, while James shared updates on the club's expanding influence. But Evelyn's thoughts drifted to that pivotal moment, standing drenched in champagne, choosing dignity over drama, knowing that true power lay not in retaliation, but in transformation. "Mom," Emma's voice pulled her back. "You okay?" "Perfect, honey. Just remembering how far we've all come. Dad told me about that day, how they treated you. Weren't you angry?" Evelyn considered her answer carefully. "Anger is like champagne. It bubbles up quickly but loses its fizz fast. What lasts is the choice we make next. They thought they were putting me in my place. Instead, they helped me find my purpose. To change Westbrook Hills. To prove that kindness is strength, that every person has worth. That true class isn't about exclusion, it's about expansion. Opening hearts, minds, communities." Later, as she and James sat on their porch swing, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky, he asked his daily question. "Any regrets?" "Just one," she admitted. "Oh?" "That champagne was 1995 Dom Perignon. Such a waste of good vintage." Now his laughter echoed across their quiet neighborhood, not an exclusive enclave, but a diverse community where professors lived next to plumbers, where worth wasn't measured by property values, but by how neighbors cared for each other. "I love you, Evelyn Morrison Blackwood, exactly as you are. And I love you, James, for seeing me when others couldn't, for building dreams instead of walls, for proving that the best revenge isn't revenge at all, it's transformation." The night air carried the sound of children playing in nearby yards, of families gathering for evening meals, of life lived fully and authentically. At Westbrook Hills, the lights burned late as adult students pursued dreams deferred, as mentors guided eager protégés, as former enemies became allies in service of something greater than themselves. The champagne incident had become legend, but the truth surpassed any myth. A moment of cruelty had sparked a movement of compassion. An attempt to humiliate had elevated an entire community. And a simple woman in a sundress had proven that true power lies not in putting others down, but in lifting everyone up. As Evelyn drifted to sleep that night, she smiled at the irony. Victoria and her crew had tried to teach her about her place in society. Instead, they'd learned that society itself could be reimagined, that places could be transformed, that the highest status came from serving others. The champagne had long since dried, but the changes it inspired continued to ripple outward, touching lives, healing divisions, proving that grace under pressure could indeed change the world. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.